Hey everyone, today we have a conversation with Chee Kiong, CEO of Charge Plus. He was the ex-CEO of SP Group for New Energies, and prior to that spent almost 20 years with Singapore Economic Development Board, doing strategy development and company engagement in clean tech, infrastructure and smart cities. This video is not sponsored by Charge Plus. If you'd like to support the channel, please subscribe and like the video. Enjoy. Okay, Ken, we're all good now. Just 3, 2, 1. Alright, let's go. Hey, hey Chee Kiong, hey, so we've been in the car for a while already. Thanks for going through some of the notes together. So thank you so much for doing this. I think most of the people who are watching this will really appreciate your time coming here to do this with us. So I understand you're the CEO of Charge Plus currently. So yeah, how on earth did you get here to where you are today? Like, was it something that was planned, or was it something that just came along the way? So yeah, maybe you could share with us like how all this happened.
All right. I would perhaps start off with my first career. I thought it's useful to talk about my very first career, which was with the Singapore Economic Development Board, EDB.
Yeah.
I would just say that I've been very gratified that I've been with the sustainable development journey for Singapore for more than 2 decades. And that started with EDB.
Decades.
Yes, more than 2 decades. That's right. Yes, I am older than I look. I'll put it
Okay. Okay.
Right.
You're very young.
And there was a bit of serendipity because when I first took up my first assignment in EDB, I was assigned the environmental technology portfolio.
And that was 20 years ago?
That was more than 20 years ago, in the late 90s. That was when I first started, right?
Okay.
And back then, this portfolio was far from being glamorous because today you say environmental technology, people are like, wow, this is an up-and-coming sector, right?
Because it's going to burn soon, right? If we don't do anything. But,
yeah,
okay.
exactly. Yeah. But back in the 90s, and we talk about more than 2 decades ago, it was far from glamorous because the biggest environmental technology companies back then were waste treatment companies.
Okay.
Right, so I was dealing with sludges, with toxic waste, etc. I was visiting waste treatment plants, well, I just say that they don't smell very good, even though they perform a very essential function. And back then, and we talk about the late 90s, renewable energy, electric vehicles were virtually non-existent in Singapore.
Correct.
Nobody talks about them. Right?
Okay.
But I fell in love with the portfolio. I grew in the portfolio. I believe in the mission. As slowly and steadily the portfolio became much more sophisticated, and that mission really came along with the portfolio where it became essential, right? It's not just creating good jobs for Singaporeans.
Right.
It's about growing a sector that can also help the world.
Yeah.
Right. So lo and behold, I never expected to stay for 2 decades in EDB. I did that.
Yeah.
And much of it was about helming the industry development of the whole clean technology, smart cities sector. Right. So I was involved in the promotion of solar energy in the early days. Today is well established, but I remembered that I was the lone voice supporting solar energy. That was a long time ago.
How long ago was that? Like,
I started in 2005.
Okay.
Right. So I remembered, going to various government agencies saying that we should start doing some work with solar energy.
Okay.
And the number of naysayers out there were, wow, you cannot believe it. A lot of people were saying, no, solar energy is not for Singapore.
Okay.
And I also got involved in the growth of the water industry. And that's something that was very meaningful to me. So I partnered with the National Water Agency, PUB, to develop water sector as really one of the growth areas for Singapore, leveraging off the strengths of Singapore as having solved many of our water challenges.
Okay.
And how do you turn that vulnerability into strength for Singapore?
Right.
So water was another big area where I spent a bit of time. And last but not least, I got involved in electric vehicles, and that was about 10 years ago. I was involved in a few interagency pilots for electric vehicles. One of which was the EV car sharing program that you see today. So Blue SG, right? You see Blue SG cars zipping around.
Correct.
that arose because of a test-bed program which I did together with LTA.
Okay.
And we launched that around 2015, 2016.
Okay.
Right? So that was how I really got involved in EVs, and it led me all the way to Charge Plus.
Charge Plus. Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. That's quite interesting. I was actually using the Blue SG, right? I was actually using it before I got my Tesla. So there was a period where I didn't have a vehicle, and I was using it more often. So it's great when you have both a vehicle to pick up and a lot to drop it off. The problem comes when either or is not available, and then that's where I'm quite cool with walking.
Yeah.
Right. It's perfectly fine to walk like 1 kilometer to your location, but it's a pain when you take the car and then you can't park the car and then you have to park it somewhere else. But other than that, I really appreciated the initiative.
And the pilot started in 2016 because the view then was that we needed a sizable number of EV charging points, right? So if we have started a very small pilot, it would not have moved the needle. So it was very deliberate, and in the end we chose Blue SG. They won the tender, and they went ahead to establish today more than 1,000 charging points. That became the largest network today in Singapore. Right?
So it's 1,000 over charging points.
Yes, they have 1,000 over. But to be fair, most of them are catering to their own vehicles, right?
Yeah.
Not to external.
Because it's a parking lot also.
That's right.
Your car has to park. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Okay. But you can argue that was the first major intervention by the government to stimulate EV adoption and to really pilot various technologies around EV usage in Singapore. Right. So I was very much part of that conceptualization and the conducting the tender together with LTA and really choosing the right parties to go with, right? And that after EDB, right? I went on to Singapore Power SP Group, right? So in that stint, I was involved in leading the grooming of new businesses for SP Group, right? So this included renewable energy, microgrids, energy efficiency, and of course the EV charging as well. Right. Then, lo and behold, I got to meet the founders of Charge Plus. I'll just say that everything came together. I took the plunge. It was not an easy decision, but I took the plunge, and I took up this role. And there are a few things that I love about Charge Plus. And if I can say a few words about this, right?
We won't charge you for it. The pun. No pun intended.
Right. I think one is I love the fact that the way Charge Plus operates today is akin to being a startup. It's akin to, so the DNA is one where we are very nimble, we are very responsive to customer needs, and we are always adjusting and evolving, right? Because what we decided say 3 months ago may not hold true to it, and the EV world is actually moving and changing rapidly around the world, right? So the fact that we can be agile, that is a huge difference for us. So I like that part. But conversely, we are still part of a bigger company. Right?
Sunsip, is it?
So that's correct. Sunsip, you're right. The largest renewable energy firm in Singapore. So we are still tethered and part of this bigger company. So that gives us stability. Our shared services are drawn from that. So it's almost having the best of both worlds. Right? So if I've gone to a startup company, I went to half and puff a lot more. Let me put it this way. Right? So it's almost like a corporate startup. It's having the best of both worlds. I love it. And I think the second aspect which I really enjoyed myself is really finding the right team in Charge Plus. That really matters to me because I think over time we have been able to find the right talent. I think the singular connection across all of us is really the belief in the mission of Charge Plus. That is really what excites me when I work with my team members. They believe that Charge Plus will catalyze the proliferation of electric mobility in Singapore in the region. I mean, we started with almost nothing, to be fair, some time back, right? And we're steadily building the installations across Singapore. We are now in all the key market segments, right? Landed homes, condominiums, HDB systems will be up soon, right? So the very first January. We'll see. Okay, so January. Darcy, we hope to see you at our HDB charging station soon. Okay. So we're working very hard. But we want to proliferate in HDB estates, which is, as we all know, crucial, right? And we're also serving fleet operators. So the likes of DHL, the likes of SingPost, etc. So that's another big market segment for us.
Okay, sorry to cut you off. So that means you are that private installations at the hubs of the logistic hubs of SingPost and DHL, so that vehicles pull in,
Absolutely.
they can charge. Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. And for fleet operators, if I can add, there are two types of operations. One is that their depots will be convenient for the vehicles to be left overnight, right? And therefore, if they convert to EVs, they install EV charging stations, on the premises, fine and good. So that's what the likes of DHL is doing.
Okay.
So we are supporting them today with EV chargers on the premises, and then they can charge their vehicles overnight. But there are also a lot of commercial van drivers, right? They bring their vans home to where they stay.
Yeah.
So therefore, having EV chargers, right,
Yeah.
in HDB is fundamental to getting more fleet vehicles to convert to EVs.
Okay.
Right. So that's why we feel that really the HDB piece is very instrumental.
Okay. So even at the hubs, they would install the slower chargers, or normally would they install the fast chargers? Like, I can imagine you go in, you pull in for a 10-minute stop while loading the goods, you plug it in and you get like 40% back in 10 minutes.
By and large, they will look at the slow chargers because they have the luxury of time, right? From between say 9 p.m. to the following day 7 a.m.
Okay.
The vans are not used.
Okay, so they go for the quantity, the number of...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. They may have a couple of fast chargers
Yep.
as an augmentation, but because, as you rightly pointed out, Darcy, if we are talking about 30, 50, 100 vehicles.
Correct.
You can't have 30, 50 fast chargers.
Fast chargers, yeah,
correct?
of course.
The power supply doesn't cater for that, as you know. So, yes. So what we're seeing is that that strategy is now evolving, but the gratifying part is that I think the fleet operators are getting clearer and clearer.
They're seeing the benefits.
Yes,
cost benefits.
They see the cost benefits, and they are now, solidifying their approach for EV charging infrastructure.
Okay.
I mean, for one, Charge Plus is giving them advice, right? Because we talk to many of them.
Right.
The interest is very strong. That's a very positive thing. They are all very interested. And then the next question:
why do you think they're that interested?
Because one is that directionally, all corporates,
Fair enough. There's a marketing goal on it. Like, is yes, no?
Marketing, yes, but it's also the alignment with the corporate vision, etc. So you look at the likes of DHL, they have already a stated goal that they want to use a certain number of EVs by a certain duration, by a certain timing. So DHL needs to meet that global corporate goal, right? So it's part of their stated ambition, right?
Sure.
So I think by and large, a lot of the big logistics players, they are heading that way. But I think more importantly is that it helps them on the wallet. And that's the driver, right? We know that because they look at the cost of running an EV is like half of that of a normal. Yes, it's about half.
So if there's will you have a rough number to get, like, if yearly, let's say you run a diesel engine, I don't know, like 5,000, like an EV is going to be 2.5, like
something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Because every kilometer you run, commercial vans usually they use diesels, right? If I do the diesel to petrol conversion, right? Or rather, pardon me, diesel to electric, right? Conversion. The cost of paying for the charging versus the cost of paying for the diesel, roughly is about half for every kilometer that you run.
Okay.
And the maintenance cost is also much cheaper.
Of course, that's almost the wear and tear is so much lesser.
You're a EV driver. I'm sure you know better than most drivers, right? You hardly use the brakes.
Correct.
Right. The engine is so simple. Right. And there's the number of moving parts is like 20 to 30. Right.
Correct.
Right. So I think maintenance cost is something that they are delighted to find out. There's so much savings, right? So I think the fleet operators are all gravitating towards EVs in our view. But therein backs the question: how do I do charging? All the fleet operators are asking. So I have 100 vehicles, I have 500 vehicles. Right? How do I handle EV charging? So this is where Charge Plus gets involved. They call us in, they ask us for our thoughts, etc. And so we are very gratified. We've started with a few fleet operators. We think that this is a very important segment for us because of the mileage.
Correct.
Right? So Darcy, you work very hard, so therefore you don't drive a lot. You work very hard. You stay in the office to work, right? But the logistics guys, they high mileage, right?
Yeah.
And therefore the emissions, footprint is much higher.
It's quite high. Correct.
So anyway, we are making a big focus on fleet operators.
Okay. So earlier you mentioned previously in the past you used to conceptualize like waste management, water supply, and even commercializing something that was a need to become like a like advantage for Singapore, right? So how did you, what was your thought process like when you were in those industries? Like, was it something like, why do you think you were able to see those areas for development? Like, was it something like, do you do business when you were young, or was it something that you studied, or somehow while you were there you were just solving the problems for them and then you decided that, hey, we could do more with this? Yeah.
Okay. I would go back to my EDB roots, right?
Okay.
Most people would know what the EB does, right?
Yeah.
We meet with global companies.
Okay.
We keep track closely on the global megatrends.
Okay.
As well as some of the technological developments around the world, right?
Yeah.
And the writing was on the wall in terms of sustainable development technologies and solutions becoming front and center for many societies around the world. And that will come to Singapore.
Okay.
So that trend was recognized way back in EDB.
Okay.
I had generations of leadership, right? Top leadership in EDB that believe in it and really sanctioned the push for more work in clean technology, in smart cities, in urban solutions.
Okay.
And the government has responded, right? So you see a lot of agencies getting involved in, for instance, allocating funding resources for R&D. The lead agencies, whether it's water, whether it's green buildings, whether it's energy, they are making a big push, right? Singapore must walk the talk, so we must demonstrate, that we believe in it as well. So I think that whole mix of factors, I think from where I was in EDB, we have the vantage point of being a pioneer, being a trailblazer, being able to scout all these trends ahead of maybe many others in Singapore.
Would you say EDB in the past almost functioned like a startup back then, because there were nothing was laid down in the ground, and you had to build it, like it had to come up? Was it?
To some extent, I do agree with you.
Yeah.
And that was part of the fun.
Okay.
So if I recount what I did in EDB, I'll just say that I enjoy my work very much.
Okay.
Right? The best type of work is one that you enjoy.
Correct.
Regardless of what you do. Right?
Yeah.
So I stayed for 20 years, and in some ways, well, yes, it's a government agency, but the work that we do, yes, it's akin to being a startup, because we have to sniff for opportunities for Singapore as a country. Right? And we have to move fast, and we have to compete with countries elsewhere for investments, for technologies, etc. Right? And also there's a lot of persuasion that needs to be done.
Okay.
Even among government agencies, because yes, EDB may believe in it, but we need to bring along other government agencies, right? Because in this space, say in the case of EVs, right, LTA must come along.
Correct.
And to be fair, EVs are much more complex than just getting LTA involved.
Correct.
There are actually 7 to 8 government agencies involved in EVs.
Correct.
Yeah.
7 to 8 agencies involved.
Correct. Because there's energy policy, because electrical safety, that's under EMA. Okay. Then you have BCA, because it's buildings, correct, directly buildings, etc. Then the National Environment Agency is also involved, because that's also tied to energy efficiency, the whole sustainable development journey. Right, EDB is involved, of course. Enterprise Singapore as well. Enterprise Singapore also has a standards team, also looking at standard setting. So yes, that was what that was what impeded the growth of EVs.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Until recently.
Until
recently, because there was diffuse responsibility.
Yeah. Of course.
So, yeah. Everybody was looking after a piece, but what's gratifying is that, of course, LT has launched the National EV Center. There's a dedicated team looking at it. They're doing the coordination across all the agencies. So today is so much more structured than, say, years ago, when you ask someone who's in charge of EVs in Singapore.
Everyone would be sending people around like, I'm not sure, you're not sure, maybe it's him, maybe it's...
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was the nature of EVs. So no disrespect to anybody in government. That was the nature of EVs. But I think the leadership within government recognized this a few years back. So they put their foot down and say that, I think we need stronger coordination. Right. So I think with the formation of NEVC, right, Singapore is on a much better footing. I think in terms of strategies, ambitious setting. And if anybody has an issue with EVs, right, per se, at least there's a point team to go to. And even though they may not be able to solve the problem, but at least they can point the person in the right direction.
Correct. And at this point of time today, we have to solve it. Like there's a motivation to solve it already.
Absolutely. So that's why I left EDB. That was 4 years ago. Time flies, right? It's very gratifying because the latest Singapore Green Plan, right? That was launched earlier this year. Wow, it's so much more ambitious than when I was working on the subject matter, right? I think that if I can use the term, pun intended, there's a sea change in the way the government is approaching this. Because last time was a little bit more piecemeal, right? Yes, sustainable development was important, yes, but the coordination could have been better. But I think the impetus, the prioritization has been ratcheting up through the years. And when I saw the Singapore Green Plan, well, I really kudos to the various agencies. Right? So I think the prioritization, the commitment by government is clearly there. And one important prompt in the SGP, right, Singapore Green Plan, EVs. Obviously Charge Plus is very happy to see that.
okay, Ken. So actually now that we're on EVs, right? So for the past 2 years, has it been 2 years that you're with Charge Plus?
No, just barely over a year. Just barely over a year.
So what have you guys been busy with in the past 1 year?
Sure. Now, the way Charge Plus is differentiated is that one, we have this ultra slim charger, right?
Ultra slim charger.
Ultra slim charger. And it's the world's slimmest EV charger. Now, so one may wonder, so what's the big deal about having a very slim charger, right?
It's so slim, you barely see it at the back.
Right. That's yes. Yes.
It's so small you can't see it. Okay, but anyway, we'll show you the DC. We'll show you the big DC charger one day, and then you'll see the difference. But anyway, okay, let's continue.
Let's do that. Right. So the average EV chargers out there, AC EV chargers, right? They are about 30 to 40 cm width, right? But if you look at the average HB car park column. And I've been measuring the width of car parks.
That's an interesting angle.
It's quite amazing. It's standardized. It's 33 cm wide. 33 cm wide. So most AC chargers that you see around the world, they can't even be installed on those columns because they were into the airspace. The authorities will not allow for it.
They won't allow if it intrudes
into airspace because as the car is reversing, right, it may hit the EV charger. So therefore, the ability for us to then provide EV charger that's slim, you can be installed on that column which is only 33 cm wide, becomes paramount, right? So we design our own charger 10 cm wide. It's only 10 cm wide.
It's really not much.
Yes, it's not much, right? So it can be then installed on the column that's the 33 cm is about this width, right? So you just imagine just 10 cm wide, right? And you have it's a dual charger, so we have two charging cables, etc. at the bottom.
So one slim charger can charge two cars at the same time.
Correct.
So you have two cables.
Correct. So this was our corporate development for a couple of years, even before I joined the company, to be honest. Right, so the development has been ongoing for a few years. We launched a product officially this year, so we're very happy that it has met the requirements in Singapore. By the way, Singapore has the most stringent EV charger requirements in the whole world. Period.
Kiasu or necessary or kiasu or in between?
Depends on who you ask. Depends on who you ask. Okay. But
from an engineering perspective, for example,
I think the good news for users of EVs and the good news for a lot of landlords is that they want to hear that EV chargers
are ultra safe.
Correct. Then they have peace of mind because they are concerned that there can be risks associated with EV chargers, right? So anyway, we met those requirements, right? And we are now busy implementing such steam chargers across Singapore. And we were talking about HB car parks just now. Yes, if all things go well, they will become the mainstay for HB car parks. So let's cross our fingers.
So is the steam charger in between two lots, or is it like behind? Like let's say if there's
in between
two
lots,
so it's
in between lots. Correct. Individual. So if you look at a HDB car park, right, you have one column, 3 lots.
Yeah.
One column, 3 lots.
Yeah.
It's very standard.
Correct.
Right? So we will place our EV charger on the column,
Okay.
right? Vertically this way, right?
Yeah.
And with 2 charging cables, we'll charge 2 cars at the same time.
So it's the charger is on the columm, or is it
On the column.
on the
correct.
column?
On the column.
Okay, that makes sense.
On the column.
Okay,
Correct.
and cabling will be, will cables be lined on the ground, or will it be from the?
There's a hook, so you just need to curl the cable
Okay.
on the hook. There's a double hook, so that the 2
Sure.
cables can be curled.
What about the electric supply to the slim charger? Like, how do you know how is that delivered? Like, is it like, are the cables laid on the ground towards the charger, or is the cables
From the ceiling.
from the ceiling?
From the ceiling.
Okay.
For obvious reasons, because you don't want cables,
correct.
to be near human traffic or the car traffic, right? Because you don't want people to run over,
Sure.
etc.
Okay.
So they'll run along the ceiling, similar to lights, right? Because you
Yeah.
see lights in car parks.
Yeah.
And then from the ceiling, the charging the electric cable come down to
Okay.
the EV charger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can. So so for chargers, right? You mentioned you have your ultra slim charger, and then are there other things that you guys are working on?
Yeah. Now the other aspect that we have been spending a lot of time on is software.
Software.
Right.
Okay.
So yes, I talked about hardware, but a big differentiation is our software, right? So one important feature that we've been working on is smart charging software.
Smart charging software on the user side or on back end side?
It affects both.
It affects both. Okay.
So let me explain, right? There's lack of localized power supply for most car parks in Singapore, right? So therefore, if you go to average car park, you talk to the landlord will say, okay, I want to set up, say, 2 charging points. That's fine, good, right? But when the landlord says, I want to do 10 charging points, 15 charging points,
Okay.
that's when usually the power supply is not enough.
Okay.
Right. So the ability for us to use IT system intelligence to then moderate the amount of charging rendered to each car then becomes fundamental for us to solving that challenge, right? Now, so therefore, if I can use an example, if a premise has only enough electrical supply for, say, 10 cars, 10 EVs, right?
Okay, so 10 EVs as in 7 kilowatt chargers.
7 kilowatt chargers, yeah.
Okay, so maybe before we go into let's say into this limitation,
Sure.
How do you, in a simple way, how do you calculate the limitation on the amount of chargers that you can have at a certain location? Is it, let's say, like the power station that is nearby, for you to have 10 chargers, what do you need? Or based on current network, okay, when you say 2 stations is fine, but 10 is not, or for example 10 maybe is not. Okay. What do we have now versus what we need?
Sure. We go to the nearest switch room, right? If it's 1 or 2 say EV chargers, you may look for a small distribution box, right, nearby, see whether there are spare circuit breakers.
Okay.
Right, but when the numbers go beyond 1 or 2 EV chargers, then we have to go to the main switch room, right, where all the electrical panels are. And we have to look for spare circuit breakers. Right, where we can draw power from. Right? So by and large, a lot of the landlords will have not enough spare circuit breakers for a large quantity of EV chargers. Right. So therefore, if I go back to my earlier example, right, if
the software,
if I go to the switch room, I look at the amperage, right, the amount of current that can pull out from the available circuit breakers, the spare circuit breakers. I can compute the number of EVs that can be so-called supplied by the circuit breaker. Very often, maybe you can do 5 or 10. But if it's say a big logistics operator and they say I want 20 because I've got 20 electric vans, right? Then how do you get from 10, where that's the limit for the power supply, to serving 20? Therefore, the smart charging software becomes very important.
So it's a bypass, or is it an in-between? Sorry, not a bypass, but an in-between layer where the connection is like a management software in between your circuit breaker and your charging networks, of which then it decides how much to pull and route and distribute. Is it?
somewhere along the lines of what you just mentioned, right? So ultimately, I just need to cap the power supply to the designated amperage from the circuit breaker.
Yeah.
If 20 EVs are all plugged in, the power supply to each EV is half. Correct. So therefore, it's the intelligence in the charging station management system. We call it the CSMS. That's the backend, software system.
Sure.
To imbue that with intelligence by which then you recognize how many cars are charging, what's the limitation on power supply, and then you dynamically move up and down the power supply to each EV. Depending on how many EVs are plugged in.
Because supply is a constant, it's fixed. Like you can only pull X amount.
Absolutely.
So then, is the solution like a plug and play? So like you go inside, you put it in. Do you need to optimize it for maybe just input in the variables like this unit has max, or how is it?
So our CSMS is structured in such a way that we can do various permutations. So one permutation is that we enter the absolute power supply. So no matter what, at the charging station level, whether it's 10 charging points or 20 charging points, you'll never exceed this power amperage threshold. Right, so therefore, we can apply a socialism, system. Every car will get the same amount, right? Right, as long as it doesn't exceed the threshold. We can also do deferred charging. So what is meant by that? There could be times of the day when the electricity's prices become lower. So the way we do smart charging then is that maybe for certain times of the day, say at 7 p.m. when the electricity prices are still not low enough, we can tuck in first, but the charging starts at 1 a.m. Right? So you defer it, then you can take advantage of lower electric prices at certain times of the day, which is usually between 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. Right? So the smart charging software allows us to fulfill that that scenario, and thereby also saving money for the landlord as well.
So two things, right? Like the immediate things I can think of now. So what is the average? Let's say HDB or let's just say HDB. Okay, how much power do we roughly have right now before that we can distribute for an EV network? 2 chargers? Like how much? Roughly around 2.
Right. In this upcoming round of investments by Charge Plus in HDB car parks, right, we are only doing three charging points for each of the HDB car parks that we've been assigned to. Right. So just 3.
And anything more is are we at a limit, or
we are at the limit of for those car parks that we're assigned to, we are at the limit. Correct.
The supply limit.
Correct. But the agencies are acutely aware of the situation. So credit to them, they are planning for the future. I'll just say that in subsequent tenders, they will take into account the limitations. They will be getting companies like ourselves, solution providers like Charge Plus, to invest in upgrading the power infrastructure. So that's a different ballgame altogether.
Correct. And will storage solutions make any sense for your hub operators? So for example, if you have a fleet, or even HDB, for example, like you can have a small 20 square meter, 30 square meters, and you can house like probably how much, 3 megawatt capacity. Does that make any sense?
I think it does. It does. So Darcy, energy storage, the use of batteries clearly is on the roadmap of Charge Plus. Our belief is that it will take a few more years for that solution to be economical. So as a technology, it does work today.
It works,
right? And we've seen such pilots around the world. But from the economic standpoint, the prices of batteries still need to continue its steady decline. Just like the battery for Tesla, right? We're seeing steady declines every year. I think the price point, that will be sufficiently attractive, may be reached maybe in about 3 to 5 years from now. But today it's still more expensive, so it's a lot more affordable for us to apply IT solutions to manage the charging through the smart charging software that you mentioned.
And at what cost do you think battery becomes viable? Like, have you maybe worked just a quick, I don't know, simple math, like $100 per kilowatt?
Today, based on the reports I've seen, right?
Yeah.
Battery prices have reached, as you already pointed out, $100
Yeah.
per kilowatt hour of capacity, roughly.
Sure.
Yeah. I personally think it has to drop by around another 50%.
50% for it to make
way to be viable.
Okay.
And it's not just the absolute battery cost; it's also
Okay.
the cost of installation. You need to put in some, a balance of system.
Sure.
Right? The total cost. But our belief is that that total cost will continue to drop because globally people are using such systems in increasing volumes.
Sure.
Right. So with more volumes, price comes down. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Yeah.
So therefore, in the EV charging space, the number of technological opportunities actually abound, right? So some people see EV charging as quite simple, right? You just put a box there, you just charge the car.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more innovations to overcome all these challenges that I mentioned.
Sure.
Now, power supply, and I've not even mentioned about hogging as well.
Correct.
Right. Because I mentioned about the lack of power supply, but the other differentiation of Charge Plus is really about solving the hogging issue.
Okay.
Our conviction is that hogging will become a national topic for EV drivers.
Okay.
Because there'll be some drivers you'll plug in, and leave the car there for many hours, even though the car is fully charged after just a few hours.
Okay.
Right, and by doing so, then you deprive someone else of the right. Not many drivers are like you, Darcy, because I know you are very conscientious, right? You're mindful that you need to be considerate. After you finish charging, you should pull the car out as soon as you can, right?
Yeah.
But there could be a minority of drivers that may not respect that principle.
Sure.
And therefore, you see hogging issues.
Yeah.
And when you're hogging, it means that the utilization rate of EV chargers become poorer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, right? And that also necessitates more EV chargers to be built, which doesn't make sense. So I think therein lies an opportunity. So Charge Plus, we are putting out a few software solutions. Akan datang. We have software nudges.
Okay.
And scheduling approaches to so-called mitigate the hogging issue.
Okay, sure. Yeah. That would be nice. So you mentioned just now you say a lot of people tend to simplify the chargers and installing a charging network, right? So how different is, let's say, an EV charger compared to one of our charging our handphone? Like is there a difference, or is it?
Okay. I would describe an EV charger essentially as a device to achieve two things.
Okay.
One is communications.
Okay.
And number two is safety.
Okay.
Right. And you need both, obviously, to achieve EV charging. So what do I mean by that? So the starting point is that when you plug a charging connector to an EV, what the EV charger does actually is to establish a handshake with the EV.
Okay.
And it goes through a set of protocols to ensure that that all the safety considerations are taken care of. There's no ground fault. Okay. The charging connector is plugged in properly into the socket head of the car, the EV, etc. Now, failing which, then the EV charging process will not kickstart.
Okay.
So therefore, the EV charger and the EV itself will communicate.
Okay.
Both sides must be happy. The EV must be happy and ready to accept the power. Okay. And the EV charger also is happy and ready to dispense the power.
Okay.
Right. So once that is established, it's hunky dory. Yeah. Then the power supply will then flow. Now, if you don't have the EV charger, you just pulling from a 3-pin plug, etc. Yeah. Then the risk will be elevated because you don't have the communication, you don't have the series of checks within the system, right? Whether there's ground fault, etc. Then the other communication system that the EV charger will need is actually with the back-end system. Okay. Especially for public chargers, right? Because you need to be able to remotely control and monitor the EV chargers.
Sure. Okay.
If they are down, the back-end system should be aware. Yeah. So therefore, the EV charger allows for the communication with the back-end. So the chipsets, right? The PCB board, right? Would then have the means to communicate through a certain protocol. Okay. Right. So that's communications. But beyond that, the EV chargers are always coupled to a pair of circuit breakers. Okay. Okay. So therefore you don't see that for phone chargers, obviously. Yeah. So a physical circuit breaker, right? So
not a software side, right? Like
not
hardware.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Hardware circuit breakers,
Okay.
right? Yes, you're right. So it's a pair of circuit breakers, right? So the first one is what's known as the MCB, miniature circuit breakers.
Okay.
So what does the MCB do? If there's an overcurrent, there's too much current.
Okay.
And I liken it to a river,
Okay.
and the current is the water flowing through the river.
Okay.
If you have too much water, what happens? Overflooding.
Correct.
Right? And you don't want overflooding to be happening in the copper cable, because a fire can arise if there's too much current flowing through a certain thickness.
Okay.
All right. So therefore, the circuit breaker will break if there's too much current flowing through it for whatever reasons.
Okay, too much current flowing through it, as in from between the circuit breaker to the EV charger, or does it matter where?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So as long as it's
correct.
Yeah, correct. It has to flow through the.
Correct. It will flow through everything, and therefore there's a intermediate point where the circuit breaker will trip if there's overcurrent, right?
Okay.
And then the second circuit breaker is what is known as the RCCB, residual current circuit breaker.
Okay.
Okay. And what does it do? If there's any electrical leakages, it will trip.
Okay.
Right. So it's about leakages, etc. So maybe the installation is one off, etc.
Okay.
And so the current may be coming out, leaking out.
How do you tell when there's a leakage? What are the telltale signs that I'm supposed to deliver 7 amp, but then somehow there's only 5 amp?
There's this milliampere threshold which will be set for the RCCB. Okay. So it's able to pick up leakages in the surroundings of the EV charger and the installation. And once it picks up, the very low current, usually it should be zero, right? Okay. Right? If everything is performing well, it's zero or virtually zero. Okay. But it picks up a certain, current that is still quite low, to be honest, and it crosses a threshold where we deem as safe. Yeah. Then the circuit breaker will trip as well. Okay. Right? And as I mentioned, it could be down to simple things like the insulation wearing off, etc. Okay. And you don't want that to happen. Right? Okay. So therefore, in a nutshell, there's a whole series of safety features that go along with EV charger. Okay. So it makes for a much pleasant and much, because nobody wants to get electrocuted when you say EV charger. Okay. Yeah.
And all these systems that are in place right now, is it is it regulation, or is it something that installers themselves, out of duty of care, like they install it?
I think some of the basic communication system that I just mentioned, these are very basic features of EV chargers, right? Okay. And inherently there are some safety measures factored into it. Okay. But the two circuit breakers that I mentioned, these are regulatory requirements as well. So therefore, we as installers, right? Yeah. We need to ensure that every EV charger will come along with those circuit breakers. Okay. With a certain set of specifications. Sure. Right, and the licensed electrical worker will actually test everything. Okay. Including the tripping of the circuit breakers to make sure that the circuit breakers actually do work. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So these are like the safety features of an EV charger that may not be present in the usual like a wall plug. Charging that may not be present. They will not be present in wall plug.
They will not be present.
They will not be present in wall plug.
So like there's definitely on the news you see like PMDs catching fire, like electric bikes, electric scooters, or whatever is catching fires. Yeah. Is there much because of all these safety systems in place? There's a much less likely chance that something like this may happen to it's better protected. Right.
Well, I get a question all the time, right? And there's this PMD, overhang for many people in Singapore, because I get a question regularly from a lot of landlords. They're always asking me, "Hey, is this going to be enough PMD in the making?" Right?
It's going to be a very huge PMD somehow,
Exactly. And you're right. Number of EVs will outnumber the number of PMDs in due course, right? So and they are much bigger. They're much bigger as well. Now, I'll say this. I'll go back to my earlier point, right? The standards for EV chargers in Singapore is high, right? Therefore, it must meet certain specs. And the good news is also that, unlike PMDs, right, in the past, EVs sold in Singapore and around the world also have to meet very stringent specifications, right? So inherently, both the EV and the EV charger, together with the electrical installation,
Yep.
have to meet proper standards, etc.
Okay.
So the probability of incident happening is actually very, very low. It's not comparable to the PMB. So I don't see how we'll have a similar frequency of issues and incidents like what we're seeing with PMBs today.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think they're comparable.
Okay. Actually, on that topic, right? Will you have any suggestions to PMD owners who commonly use their devices at home and then they just want to be sure that, hey, can I at least can I check myself to see whether my PMD is safe? Or
I think a lot of the fires, to be fair, I'm not an expert on PMDs,
Sure,
but from what I read, it seems like they don't meet the basic specifications.
Okay.
Right, so the charger may not be the right type.
Yeah.
They just Taobao, simple charge, the connect, the
Sure.
plug heads and what have you,
Sure.
and then plug into the PMD.
Sure.
And the battery in the PMD, with the BMS as well,
Yeah.
may not be also proper.
Okay.
Right, so I think the fault may lie with both sides, the PMD itself, the battery, as well as the charging system, the socket system, right?
Okay.
Right, so if both are not even able to meet the basic specifications, then I think the risk is much higher.
The risk is much higher.
Right, but I think based on the current guidelines of LTA, right,
Yeah.
if the PMD is sold with those specifications in mind,
Yeah.
actually the risk is much more
Okay,
lower.
so significantly reduced if
Yes, I think
whatever
so.
that you're buying
I think so.
is at least follows the most minimum requirement set forth by LTA or whichever agency that is in charge.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
I think the same applies to EVs. I
Yeah.
think sometimes people talk about EV risk. I would just say that the risk of EVs is not zero, right? But that said, the risk from internal combustion engine cars is also
Correct.
not zero. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
I was very intrigued. I read a newspaper article. I think there was a Porsche, ICE Porsche, by the way, not
Okay.
an electric Porsche. Yeah. It caught fire, just being stationary,
Yeah.
right, in the car park, in the
Correct.
HV car park in Singapore just a few months ago.
Yeah.
Right, so a normal IC car can
Yeah.
catch fire, and when you have accident, with an IC car,
Yeah.
there's always concern that it may burst into flames,
Correct.
right? Because the petrol side of the car may be hit and,
Correct.
and it sparks a combustion, right? So I think in a similar light, there's always this fire risk. Question is whether it's at a level that's tolerable, right?
Yeah.
So based on the studies, and depending on which study you go to, right? Tesla, I hope it's accurate,
Yeah.
Tesla put out a study to show
Correct.
that the fire incident rate for Tesla EVs
Yeah.
is actually even lower than that of IC cars
Correct.
globally,
Yeah.
right? So to me, that was very comforting.
Correct.
I mean, of course, it's not zero risk. We wish it's zero risk, it's not. But the question is whether it's tolerable.
Correct. I think just by driving itself, you're putting yourself in quite a bit of risk already on the road. There's so many road accidents every day.
There you are.
Correct.
There you are.
And if you watch your Fast and Furious series, right, like each time they shoot the car, or if the car gets into an accident, right, it explodes. Right? You don't see, you have a whole tank of petrol sitting in your vehicle waiting to just ignite in any way possible. Compression too much, one spark, one cigarette. Sometimes you cannot even use your mobile phone at the pump stations for whatever reasons. But yeah, so all these things are, people have to come to terms with it. Like there's a risk.
Absolutely. So we do this education exercise with a lot of landlords because they keep asking us questions, rightfully so, right?
Yeah.
Is this similar to PMDs?
Right.
Are there really fire risks, etc.? And then
Right.
we really have to educate them. Yes, the risk is not zero, but
Right.
we think it's manageable.
Right.
And of course, we are taking steps to make sure that the safety is not compromised.
Sure.
Is actually able to meet the specifications in Singapore,
Yeah.
right? And second, because ideally we should also kick in, etc. if there's an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
But that said, I want to flag out a challenge that EVs will bring to Singapore,
Sure.
right? Not fire risk per se, but the lack of sound.
Sound.
Correct.
Okay.
Right? Because, Singapore said jaywalk, maybe me included, right?
We all do.
Did I just say that?
I join you.
Public domain.
We
Yeah.
both go to court together.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So let me repeat. Some other people may like to jaywalk. Okay. Right. And when you just walk across the street, right? Of course, you rely on your sight and your ears, right?
Correct.
The sound to warn you of impending traffic, right? But with EVs, we all know it's very quiet.
Correct.
At low speeds, it's virtually silent, right? Therefore, I think pedestrians, people crossing the road, etc., have to keep a more watchful eye than.
Correct.
I use the word eye, because you cannot rely on this anymore.
You're correct.
Right? And if you are using mobile phone like most Singaporeans do,
I know.
while walking along the road,
Correct.
it is a clear and present danger.
Yes.
So there needs to be lifestyle changes. I think there needs to be education to warn people that more EVs will be on the road.
Sure.
In car parks, etc.
Yeah.
You don't even hear the vehicle coming near you. So you have to stay away from a mobile phone while walking.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing right now, right? Like, it's not even an EV thing anymore. It's more like just when you drive alone, or even when you walk to somewhere, the amount of people you don't want to count the number of people who are on their phone. You can count the number of people who are not on their phone. Yeah. So I think this is something like, even nowadays when you cross the road, like, it's just 10 seconds or even 15 seconds to cross the road. I think it's fair for everyone's safety, just put down your phone for that 15 seconds and cross the road, because for all you know, a bicycle who did not see you may swerve somewhere, and a vehicle that did not expect the bicycle to swerve will knock into the bicycle, and then the vehicle may spin, and you can have a whole chain of events just because we couldn't disconnect from our phone for just a while. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why coming back to my earlier point, yes, I think there needs to be some education. One on the less reliance on mobile phones.
Correct.
And of course,
it would be good if your phone can be like, you're crossing the road soon, please. But I think that's too much.
Okay, that's a bit futuristic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but you were saying about the EVs being quieter in general.
Correct. So I was just saying that then that becomes a new challenge for society. But I think it will take time to evolve, and people will get used to it. But I think in the initial period, then people need to be reminded, be careful, because EV population is going to go up, right? Very quickly. Yeah. But coming back, you're mentioning, to me, how would the Charge Plus be, scaling, right, in the near future? So I spoke about the various market segments, right? And HDB car parks then becomes a very big segment for us, and with that, we will be in virtually all major market segments in Singapore, right? So really, our tagline is Charge Plus everywhere. Okay. Right. So HDB, condominiums. This is where people sleep overnight. They can charge their EVs, while they're asleep. And then you have workplace charging, and then you have chargers for fleet operators. Right? And I think with that spectrum, and the ability for us to do smart charging, to help people address hogging issues. That will really give people peace of mind. I can buy an EV. So really we're driven by our mission. How do we proliferate EV chargers across Singapore? So that psychologically, and part of it psychological. We see enough EV chargers out there, you have the peace of mind. Peace of mind, yes. I will not run out of juice and not be able to find a nearby EV charger. Not many people like you, Darcy. You're a pioneer in this. You booked this Tesla. Correct. Years ago, right? Correct. So actually, in 1.6, it's been 5 years. So actually, yes. So whatever that you raise is a very valid point, because most people ask us, I don't see any chargers anywhere. How do you charge your car? Like is it inconvenient? And I think that the first thing I often tell people, or even like I tell you, right, like for EV charging. In order of convenience, the very first one is home charging. Okay, if you can go home, plug your car in overnight, that solves everything. Yes. As an EV owner, that would solve everything for you, home charging. Or the second best is charging at work, right? If you can charge at work, which is somewhere you frequent all the time, that will solve everything for you also. Absolutely. If you don't have A or B, your last option is destination charging, which means it's a place that maybe you go to for dinner, or you run errands, or a place that the worst case scenario is going out just to charge. And there are some people like that, where because they don't have the convenience of home charging, they are actually finding public chargers to charge on a regular basis, right? But they are the, if I can use the word, trailblazers of Singapore. But the majority of Singaporeans drivers would not want to take up such a lifestyle. So you're right, we have to make it more commonplace.
Sure.
It's a psychological comfort. They see a lot of EV chargers. They are more prepared to buy EVs.
Correct.
And really Charge Plus, we have the mission. We want to proliferate, EV chargers.
Sure.
And we have stated ambition. We want to have 10,000 charging points by 2030, just in Singapore alone.
Just in Singapore. So we're not talking about Southeast Asia yet.
No,
just Singapore.
Just in Singapore alone. And thanks for bringing up Southeast Asia, because we just opened our Malaysian office.
Sure.
We are opening our Vietnamese office. In just a few days time officially.
Are you guys hiring?
In Malaysia and Vietnam, yes.
Okay.
Why? You are based in Singapore. I wonder why
I'm just asking for the audience. Like now they know, like if you want to have an opportunity to work for Sunsip and Charge Plus,
by all means, send the resume. Send the resume. We are hiring. Right. So we're starting with those two markets. And
do I get referral or not?
we are already working on a lot of deals already. Okay. One more. Okay. Anyway, those two markets are our initial starting points, but we are also looking at other countries in Southeast Asia. So ultimately, we believe that Singapore will be a big hit. We think Singapore will have the highest penetration of EVs in Southeast Asia. But in terms of sheer number of cars,
we don't have much.
Yeah, exactly. We have to confront the hard truth. Singapore has only but 700,000 four-wheelers or thereabout, right? While in Malaysia, we are talking about, maybe I saw a stat somewhere, 15 million four-wheelers in Malaysia.
Almost primary form of transportation.
Exactly. So therefore, for us as a company, Singapore is the beachhead. Singapore is our lead market. But we want to go out to the region. We want to make Charge Plus a homegrown company that has global ambitions and global footprint, right? So certainly, my dream for as long as I'm in Charge Plus is to make Singapore proud of Charge Plus as a homegrown company.
Sure.
Right? Yeah.
So actually, now that we're on the topic of that, right? You mentioned that Charge Plus' goal is to almost get 10,000 overchargers, or at least 10,000 chargers in Singapore. So, what do you think? At what point do you think Singapore is ready for EV adoption? So, right now we're building up the infrastructure to support by 2030 a certain amount of EV population. Where are we now, and how much work does it take for us to reach our eventual goal to maybe support a good 50% of EV population by 2030, or even more, for that matter, if we're being ambitious?
The government has announced that by 2030, right, and you know this 60,000 charging points.
Sure.
2030, of which 40,000 are in public premises, 20,000 are in private premises. My view is that 60,000 thereabout is the right number to support an adoption of maybe roughly around one third EV conversion in Singapore.
Okay.
Right. So I think we are on the right trajectory. The agencies are certainly working hard. I can attest to that. They will be sharing more plans and they'll be putting out a course.
Sure.
For vendor solution providers to support them in their plans. We do see on the horizon in the next 3 to 5 years, I think agencies will put up more and more car parks for solution providers like us to operate and install EV chargers. Right. So that part will be in tandem with the growth in EVs. Right. But my view is this, because you're asking, when is the inflection point, so to speak, right? I personally think the train has left the station. The question about whether EVs will come to Singapore is already moot. Right? It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And you are a trailblazer in terms of getting an EV. Darcy.
I just like the product. To be fair, I really like the product. Let's go for it.
And many people do, as you know, well. I think that proportion of people, drivers that can accept EVs, that like EVs, that proportion is growing very steadily. Okay. Right? And we are very gratified by this fact. The price point of EV is getting more and more interesting, right?
Sure.
Because year on year, notwithstanding the supply chain issues that we
Sure.
see around the world of late, right? Year on year, we see price decreases, right? And the automakers are building larger EV manufacturing plants. Right. So when you make a manufacturing plant of capacity of say 500,000 EVs per year versus 50,000, the unit cost for EV really drops, right?
Sure.
So my view is that yes, there are even subsidies out there, but the subsidies will go away.
Sure.
EVs will compete on pricing with conventional cars. Now,
Sure.
Let's imagine this scenario. EVs are the same price as conventional IC cars. They are more cool in most instances, right? They are environmentally friendly.
Sure.
The operating cost is only half.
Correct.
You have sufficient EV charging, infrastructure in Singapore. Why would anybody want an IC vehicle? My view is really, within 5 to 10 years, the people that will buy new IC cars will enter the minority.
Sure.
Right. So that the change is afoot. You are trailblazer. I think with time, there'll be a lot more people like you.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning, by the way, you can have this is for you. Like, there's no sugar.
Thank you. I didn't realize that.
Right, that's not what I was doing. Secretly open it up.
That's
yeah, but so something I'm quite interested with, right? You mentioned that by 2030 we're going to look for almost 60,000. Was it 60,000 chargers?
Correct.
Okay. So, what is the number that we're using here? Like, how many EVs to one charger are we assuming for this network? And are we talking about the availability of this charger being the whole day, or are we talking about real world usage patterns where if you're talking about home charging, 80% of the time your charger is going to be used at night, right? When people go home, you want to plug it in at night. So what are the numbers that we're looking at here? Like, how do we reach this? How do you think we managed to reach this magical 60,000 number? That
right. Now, to be fair, I do not have the calculations behind the 60,000, right?
Yeah.
But from what I can gather, from what I can postulate, I think the agencies have assumed a certain ratio of EVs to each charging point.
Sure.
And that ratio may be 1 to 5, right? Every charging point can serve 5 EVs.
Yeah. For
the simple fact that you don't have to charge your EV every day.
Of course.
Right? The average range of an EV today is now 400 kilometers and above. Yes, improved so much. Yeah.
I think real world range we're looking at maybe 250 to 320.
Okay.
400 to 500 is I think they have their WLTP, which is highway driving. Yes. In Singapore, I think we do quite a lot, like maybe 50-50. So maybe it's just me, like heavy foot. But my car, I do about 300 kilometers. Actually, we just did a full range test on my car. Okay. It's a SR Plus, right? I drove the whole of Saturday, almost 8-9 hours.
Wow.
99% to 5%, it was about 350 kilometers.
Oh, that's the okay. So I didn't realize that the disparity is not negligible. It's quite
different. So WLTP cycles, they assume my guess based on their numbers is the consumption is 100 watt hour per kilometer. Okay. On average, my drives, city and highway driving 50-50. You're looking at between 140 to 150.
I see.
So 100 watt hour kilometer is a steady 90 kilometers to 100 kilometers hour throughout the entire battery life.
Okay.
And then you can receive them. So it's not that it's false marketing.
Right.
It's typical to your ICE engines where they tell you, my 1 liter engine can get you 22 kilometers per liter, but you never reach those numbers.
Yes.
High chance you're getting 12 to 15.
That's right.
Even for a hybrid, if they tell you 32 kilometers per liter, you're looking at 25-24.
Yes, absolutely.
So yes, I think most vehicles, if you're looking at a WLTP range cycle, you can effectively deduct almost 25 to 30% of those range for real world driving.
Okay, good to know. Because I've been very curious to find out, what's the actual driving range of the Tesla, right? Because I know the stated range based on certain specifications, right? I didn't realize that it's quite hefty at 25% thereabout, you know, because I was expecting 10 to 20%, right? But 25% is quite hefty, right? But notwithstanding that number, right? Because even at 25%, we're talking about say 350, 300 kilometers.
300. I think 300
kilometers. The average driving distance of a Singaporean driver, and this stats from LTA, 45 kilometers
per day.
45 kilometers.
That's fair.
Per day. So some are higher, some lower, etc. Right. So so 300 kilometers, right? As example, that will yield 6 days. 6 days.
Right, about a week.
Correct. So therefore, to use a ratio of 1 charging point to 5 EV drivers, that's about fair.
Yeah.
Right. So therefore, 60,000 charging points conceivably can support times 5, right?
200,000-300,000 vehicles.
Correct. 200,000.
Don't count hogging.
Right. Yes. And to be fair, also a proportion of those 60,000 maybe landed homes. So the ratio is 1 to 1. Right. But yes. But I think safely, speaking, I think we're talking about 200,000 EVs, right?
Yeah.
So I think 200,000 EVs is a fair projection by 2030.
Sure.
Correct. But that said, the government is just saying 60,000 as the minimum. Knowing how the agencies work, they'll plan for some buffer.
Yeah, and also just to put things in context for everyone, right? So I was doing some calculations yesterday. Roughly, you're looking at something the more ideal. If you're thinking about, that means every one charger to about 4 to 5 vehicles, you're looking at one deck of EV chargers in, let's say, a HDB multi-story car park. Just one full deck of EV charging, you can cater to more or less the vehicle population in the MSEB.
Yes. So I concur with that. I understand that the planning parameter of the government agencies is to have 15% of all car parks, right? Whether it's
car park lots.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, all the car park lots, you're right. All the car park lots is a singular car park, but all the car park lots counted, 15% of the lots will be equipped with EV chargers over time.
Okay, so that means, for example, if a multi-story car park has 100 lots, we're looking at 15 dedicated lots that are for EVs.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Whether they will have EV chargers in the near term, that's a different question. But the planning parameter is that over time they want to have EV chargers, right? So it depends on the time scale, right? And that also means that there needs to be a fair bit of investments in the infrastructure, because the power is typically not enough, right? Right, but that's a separate story altogether. But 15%, in my view, then will be about right. You don't want to over-invest as well, so it's about right to support HDB car parks. And I think that 15% ratio then can also apply to condominiums.
Okay.
So I think with that 15% ratio, I think Singapore is in a good place. And I think Singapore, among many countries now looking at this, right? Because of heavy reliance on car parks in HDB condominiums.
Correct.
Right? That's like 95% of all population in Singapore, right? To be able to get that right, get the ratio right, and then put the power infrastructure, that is everything to our success in using EVs.
And it's nice to know that in the region we can demonstrate the solution for a dense city, for a large population of people who rely on public charging networks. Like we can be, again, like when you go back to EDB, maybe there's an opportunity for Singapore to have this as another of a solution that we can export for EV chargers, like for countries who want to, want to adopt EVs on a larger scale.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Singapore, yes, is a highly dense city, but in Asia, many cities are highly dense.
Correct.
Right? So similar problems. Car parks are short of space, and you need to be able to manage the lack of power supply, etc. So the challenges are similar. So I would echo what you just said. Singapore is the beachhead, and we want to use Singapore as a springboard to go out to the region.
Okay. Does it make sense to cover the roof with the car park roof with solar? Does it even help generate enough for the vehicles?
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no, because the intensity of EV charging is so high. and you know, you talk about 50% of the car park. It's almost like doubling.
Yeah.
Almost like if all the plugs are, you know, operating at the same time. It's like doubling the power usage of the whole estate, housing estate.
How the whole estate?
Yes, the whole housing
that
estate.
Much?
Yes, it's the energy cluster, right? So I was just doing some math, right? If you live in a landed home, if you you know, are charging an electric vehicle, the act of charging an electric vehicle per day is almost equivalent. You're almost doubling the power consumption of the house.
Actually, yes, now that you mentioned.
Yeah.
If your battery is 50 kilowatt hour, you charge it once a week, 4 times a month. That's 200 kilowatt, which is pretty much what a usual energy household would use with air conditioning.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So therefore, but of course, I don't want to alarm anybody, because people are like, wow, then are we using more energy? But that usage is then displacing petrol and diesel usage, right?
Sure.
And the good news is that every conversion of an ICE car to EV in Singapore, we are talking about 50% carbon emissions reduction. 50, right? Which is quite sizable. It's not trivial, right? So therefore, you just give up your ICE car, you convert to EV.
Sure.
Even after factoring the carbon emissions from the power plants.
Okay.
Right? Because obviously the power has to come from the power plants.
Correct.
They still emit CO2.
So where is this efficiency coming from? Like you mentioned, almost up to 50%. Like where are the savings coming from?
Now, interestingly, the ICE engine is not very efficient.
Sure.
That's the unfortunate truth.
True.
The efficiency is only about 25%.
Okay.
So every unit of energy that comes from whether it's a petrol or diesel, you only get 25% output in terms of the mechanical motion of the car.
Okay.
Conversely, for the power plants, and in Singapore, virtually all our power is coming from natural gas-fired power plants. Yeah. They use what is known as combined cycle, you know, power systems.
Are we at 90% that is coming from LNG?
60%.
60%.
Right? So those power plants operate at 60% for the latest technologies, right? The older generation, I think, is 50+%.
Okay, sure.
Now it's 60+%. So therefore, every unit of energy coming from natural gas, you produce the power, you're getting 60%, right? Now there is, to be fair, transmission and distribution losses.
Sure.
But that's only a few percentage points.
Yep.
Right? And it gets to the car, etc. There's a bit of loss in the car, but that is also not substantial, right? Sure. So therefore, you look at the whole system loss, etc. The EV is much more energy efficient, right? And that translates to the CO2 emissions, reduction.
Okay, because even for petrol, like even though you drill and mine and then refine the petroleum, and then you still have to deliver this petrol to the stations. It's not like you're connected by pipes.
Yes, but when I talk about CO2, I don't even talk about the emissions related to the delivery of the petrol. I didn't even count that. Just purely from the tailpipe.
Okay. So
the CO2 from the tailpipe of ICE car versus the CO2 emitted by a power plant. Every kilometer that you drive, the EV has a 50% emissions reductions in Singapore. Okay. And it has to be region or country or even locality specific, because it depends on the power grid mix of that locality.
Okay.
Right? So in France, 2/3 of the power comes from nuclear. Zero carbon, right?
Correct.
So when you drive an EV in France, you have the highest proportion of emissions reduction possible.
Now that you mentioned nuclear,
yes.
Is there a case for nuclear for Singapore?
Well, that's a massive digression.
It is a massive digression, but let's have a quick one.
Okay.
Let's have a quick one.
Sure. Without compromising what I know from my previous life, I'll just say that officially the government has said that they are watching this space closely.
Sure.
They are investing in nuclear science, nuclear safety capabilities. Because even though some of the regional countries are looking at nuclear power, I'll just say that the psychological pushback against nuclear is much higher than reality.
Sure.
And therefore, even if the nuclear plant, right, can be proven to be sufficiently safe. The buffer zone is manageable. Because you cannot afford to have buffer zone of a few kilometers. Right? Singapore is so small.
Correct.
You cannot sterilize the land with a few kilometer buffer. Right. So if power plant can be, for instance, embedded underground, can be proven to be very safe, then it's a shot. But I personally think that psychologically, right, with society, it's very hard to get buy-in. Right. It's not matched with reality, but that's the sad truth, right? You know, if you cannot overcome this perception,
and it's very hard to push something.
Correct. It's very hard. You're absolutely right.
It's almost as though because when something does happen, the perceived effect of a nuclear meltdown is huge, right? So everywhere you see like how many the massive amount of life that has been affected or displaced by one incident is on a scale that people. Although it may happen in a very long period, like 30 years, maybe was one accident, but that one accident is so massive that it really just bites people's perception of it. Like even let's say Fukushima, when all this happened, now as we look back at it, so many lives were moved out, and even when an accident happened, right, we don't know whether are there SOPs in place. Like when it does happen, what do you do? Like we can't study these things, you know, right? We can't say that okay, there has not been enough accidents for us to study to know what to do in future. Like, so do I move my people out of the way, or do I keep them there? Like if I move them out of the way socially, their jobs, their lives, everything changes. Right? Like, am I inflicting more damage by moving people, or by keeping them? And I think we don't have all those data to, like, we can't study these things until it happens.
You're absolutely right, Darcy. So it's a touchy subject in Singapore, right? Because there are strong views. I've seen very strong opponents of nuclear power. I heard one comment. The person was saying that if Singapore ever sets up a nuclear plant, this person would immigrate overseas. That's how strong the view was against nuclear, right? And I've also supporters of nuclear power in Singapore. I mean, I've come across them. They feel strongly that Singapore should go nuclear. My view is that globally, maybe not Singapore per se, right, but globally, for the sake of being more effective in combating climate change, nuclear is actually being a zero carbon energy source. Needs to be re-evaluated. Needs to be re-evaluated. And there's a lot of fail-safe technologies, coming up for nuclear power. Right. But psychologically in Singapore.
I get it. It's fair.
Unfortunately, we don't have like I say USA, where we can place a nuclear plant in the remote areas.
We don't have that option also. And also, I think with this sort of things, it takes a lot of education right from the start. Like you have to prime people for it to say that nuclear power is safe. And you have to give people the facts. And we have not gone through any of those. So for it to happen, it feels like it's a long shot. So what about solar though? Do you think solar is an alternative? It's a good alternative for us, or even as a small country, what can we do with... I know this is a bit going off track, but since we're on the topic of energy, let's just have a quick one. So what about solar? Like, I mean, Sunseap, Charge Plus, like they have been the pioneer, one of the pioneers in like solar.
Solar in Singapore has reached a no-brainer stage. If you have rooftop, the rooftop is of a sufficient size. It's a no-brainer to implement solar systems on your rooftop. It is cheaper than conventional power today.
Oh, is it?
It's cheaper. And conventional power prices have gone through the roof. Where I said just now it's cheaper, I meant 1 year ago or 2 years ago, right? When conventional power prices were even lower. But today, with elevated conventional power prices, it makes even more sense. Right? And the good thing about the solar power is that it is steady pricing. Once you make the investment, you can compute with a good degree of certainty what is the value of solar power for the next, let's say, 20 years. So therefore, there is also energy security in terms of pricing. I
get what you mean.
Right? While conventional power prices, you are subject to price fluctuation. And in the last 3 months, I think Singaporeans, whether you're an individual or whether you're a company, a lot of people are subject to a lot of shocks around spikes in the energy prices. Right? And you don't see that in solar energy, right? Because you can do the modeling quite accurately. Right? So that is actually one additional benefit of solar power, which is often understated. And fossil fuel, power prices, it carries the burden of, fluctuating prices. And therefore there's risk involved.
Sure.
Right? And we are now seeing the risk, materializing.
Okay.
In a very painful manner, because I'm the EV charging business, right?
Correct.
I have to watch input power prices very closely.
Sure.
I can just say that it's very painful to watch current prices.
Okay.
Because the power prices really have skyrocketed.
Sure.
Right, for a variety of reasons.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Actually, so how's the return on investment, like let's say to run an EV charging business, right? Like after you deploy all the chargers, and then you have a few business models that you have for
Right.
Charge Plus, right? You have pay per use, and you also have a subscription model. How are you guys calculating these things, and how is it as a business? When is it good for a user to come in and say that, okay, I'm going to subscribe? When is it okay for a user to say, okay, I'm going to use pay per use? And then, let's say, for every charger you install, are you looking like maybe a 2 years return on it, or 3 years, 4 years? Just a ballpark, you don't have to share the exact.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think in broad terms, we don't think there is profitability in EV charging in the near term. So by near term, I mean 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years, okay.
Because the number of charging points in Singapore is, already higher than the number of EVs in Singapore. By the way,
Okay.
Right. So interesting fact, in case people are not aware,
Sure.
there are more charging points than EVs in Singapore.
Okay.
And of course, a large proportion of EVs, come from landed homes.
Mm.
So they have the ability to charge their EVs at home. So no problem for them, 1-to-1 ratio, right? Now, we do see trend lines to suggest that EV adoption is really scaling quickly.
Yeah.
I got to condominiums as an example, right?
Yeah.
And it was 0 EVs, like say 6 months ago, and then within 6 months, they're coming back to me and say, Mr. Charge Plus, I've suddenly a surge in the number of residents buying EVs. EVs are popping up.
Yeah.
Can you quickly install EV chargers in our premises? So those are anecdotal evidence that the interest is picking up quite strongly.
Okay.
Right. But that said, we're still talking about fairly small number of EVs. But we know that the trade has left the station, as I mentioned, and the trend lines are very clear cut. So the next few years, we don't think it's a business where we are looking at good profit margins at all. I don't think so. But that said, we are here for the long haul.
Sure.
Right? So these are all prior investments for long haul, where we will see the eventual benefits in maybe year 5, year 7, year 9.
Sure.
Right? But not in the next few years.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, what more do you hope that Singapore can do for EVs or even clean energy? Based on your own wish list, what more do you think we can do?
If I wish this,
a personal one, this doesn't need to come from a company perspective. It's just your personal wish list.
Sure. I think one would be continued education for the masses, right? So what do I mean by that, right? How do you use an EV charging station?
Okay.
Right? To you, it may be like, what's so complicated about using EV charging station?
Sure.
But there's certain etiquette that you need to abide by, right? So one etiquette, as we were talking about earlier on, is that to move your EV promptly after you finish charging.
Sure.
Right. So there could be a number of people that may not apply the principle, right? And that would not be very good for the other EV drivers, right?
Sure.
The other good etiquette is for AC charger, remember to coil back the charging cable, right?
Okay.
Because when people are in a rush, say in the HB estate, right? You charge your car overnight. In the morning, you're rushing to work.
Okay.
You pull out your charging connector from the EV. If they are rushing, would they leave the charging connector on the floor, on the ground, and just scoot off?
Okay.
Or they'll just coil once, but most of it is still dangling.
It's like your petrol station air pump.
Yes. No, absolutely. Right? So therefore there needs to be some etiquette about hogging, some etiquette about using the charging station properly.
Sure.
Because if Singaporeans and again I personally think that majority should be fine. It's always that minority that that may not be showing exemplary behavior, right?
Sure.
So if the charging connector is not quite back, the next EV may run over the charging connector.
Sure.
And
correct. And everyone is it's a lose-lose for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that whole part is about education, and I think the agency has to play a role, community leaders have to play a role, etc. And the likes of your type of YouTube video will have to play a role.
Sure, this is getting it up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Now, then the other part, the other big challenge is around, and we've spoken at length about some of this, right? Is about beefing up the power infrastructure. I've shared, the agencies are aware of this, they are already doing the necessary planning, right? How do you get more localized power supply? How do you get more power supply to estates in Singapore? So it's not just the switch room next to the car park, but it's also the power supply to the building, and even potentially the grid power supply. Right? So that's the power grid itself. So I think the various issues are looking at it, and I think for us to really get to the final lap, so to speak, you need to resolve power issues across Singapore.
Okay. So you've got education and you've also got the infrastructure.
Yes.
For actually getting the supply there.
Yes.
Okay. So you wish that it could be faster, deployed faster, or like?
Well, okay. I don't want to jump the gun because
Sure.
I think some of the condominiums may need help.
Okay.
Right? Because the agency obviously will look at HDB car parks.
Because majority of the...
Correct. Correct. And resolving. But I think some of the condominiums then may hit the peak threshold.
Okay.
And some of the condominiums may be asking me, would the government actually give me a subsidy for me to upgrade my power supply? Obviously, I don't have an answer. Right?
Sure.
So that's maybe something for the relevant agencies to look at. And I'm referring to condominiums, referring to commercial and industrial properties.
Okay.
So as the number of EVs scale, the power supply requirement scales, there may need to be a one-time upgrade of switch room and substation. One-time upgrade.
Okay.
Right? But can there be a subsidy for the private sector to upgrade their switch rooms?
Okay.
I'm sure the agencies are pondering over such issues.
Okay.
Right? So I'm sure the agencies can imagine what my recommendation would be. That's yes.
Yeah, of course. So that's interesting. Right? So when we talk about subsidies, it's an entirely different thing, which it brings in a lot of things, like whether the subsidy is really reaching the end consumer at the end of the day, or like do the end consumers really benefit from this the subsidies. For example, right, let's say you have for example, this says EVs, okay? You've currently, I think there's a 20 plus 25,000 grant on EVs, right? So the question comes in is, how much of this 45,000 in grants are actually reaching the end consumer if someone wants to get an EV in Singapore? So would there be a similar situation in, like, are there other solutions other than, let's say, a subsidy to power stations? Like, if we look at a power station, more than a power station, like, can it be like a backup storage solution for a certain estate so that it can be multi-purpose rather than just a storage solution? Like,
you raise a couple of interesting solutions and suggestions. So when I talk about the potential, application of subsidies, right? To be fair, it's for the substation, not the power station.
Okay.
So the substation is the part of the power grid,
right?
To bring power from the power stations to the premises.
Okay.
So I think the power stations is different ballgame altogether, but it's really the last substation that will pull power from the power station, right? And after that last substation, the power then will be stepped down, so to speak, right? In terms of voltage to low tension, and that enters the premises, whether it's HDB car parks, whether it's a commercial premise, right? Now, so I'm talking about that last substation and also the switch room, say in the car park, right? That requires upgrading. Okay. Now, all said, you talk about subsidies for EVs, right? Yeah. The good news about one facet of the subsidy is that it's a VES, right? Vehicular emission scheme.
Yep.
I think I got the acronym right.
Yes, I think it's right. So if it's not right, we'll correct it.
Right. Okay. So therefore, it's penalizing the polluters in favor of the the more environmentally friendly vehicles. So that there's no net subsidy which taxpayers have to really come up with money for, right? So you buy a pollutive SUV, then you
subsidize the EV.
Darcy lah, support Darcy, right? But I also noted that there's this road tax adjustment, right?
Yeah.
But in the same breath, Ministry of Finance has come out to say that okay, because there's a reduction of petrol levy.
Sure.
Therefore, I need to apply additional tax.
Sure.
To compensate for that.
Yeah.
I personally think that that may go against the spirit of recognizing the positive externality of EVs.
Sure.
Right, because we recognize that EVs, contribute to Singapore's sustainability goals, and it's not just emissions, by the way.
Sure.
I want to emphasize that there's much reduced PM 2.5, much reduced NOx and SOx, right?
Yeah.
And particularly and all soot and what have you, right? And all this contributes to lower health issues for Singaporeans.
Sure.
Right, so for all the benefits of EVs beyond just emissions, carbon emissions alone, I think there should be more recognition of that positive externality, right? And since we can agree that EVs bring a certain amount of benefits to Singaporean society at large, then the subsidies are justifiable. So that road tax adjustment, yes, it's fine and good because road tax was reduced somewhat.
Sure.
But then to have a counter tax to compensate for the loss of petrol levy, I thought it went against that principle.
Sure.
Right. I'm sure the EV community has been commenting on that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that could be a discussion point for the community at large, together with the relevant government agencies.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I think the additional tax on to cover the petroleum levy at $700 is honestly quite a bit. So at the end of the day, if you count in if you really count in road tax, the additional tax versus a vehicle that you will buy a hybrid fair enough. Okay, I get it. It's way cleaner. Or if you buy a 1 liter or 1.2 liter turbocharged engine, the turbocharged engine is going to be cheaper to run than the EV, even though it's way more competitive than the EV, simply because that 1.2 liter engine has been selected to come into this market to reduce the cost. Like it has been optimized already, based on the current
I agree fully. So I think that's something that is worth re-examination by the relevant authorities. I'm sure they are rethinking whether there's something that should persist. My view is that it runs counter to the broader principles
of it.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, back to the topic. So you're mentioning condos really do could use an extra hand to increase the at least the supply, the infrastructure supply to. Correct.
Yep. And to be fair, it's not imminent, right? But they could be looking at the upgrade 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And it's a one-time upgrade, as I mentioned. But the upgrade is quite hefty, right? So if they do not get enough financial support, they may hesitate to upgrade, and then that will hinder EV adoption.
Okay, and that is on the condo's management to pay for it, is it? How does that work?
Rightfully, yes.
Rightfully,
yes. Rightfully, yes. Right. So if you need to, say, double the size for a issue, as example.
Yeah.
Right, then the condo management has to use the sinking fund.
Right? To pay for it. Okay.
Yeah, the last I checked, ChargePass will not do it.
Okay.
Because it's a very hefty investment, right? So rightfully, the condo management will have to do that.
Okay.
But the condo management will hesitate because it's not a trivial investment.
Sure. So when you say not trivial, like what's the number are we looking at? 50, 100, 200, half a million?
I think it'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
Right? Depending on the number of switchboards and whatever, but I think hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Okay.
And if you have to pull a bigger connection cable from power grid, then the cost will become even
higher.
Yeah,
that's quite hefty.
Yeah, it's hefty.
Yeah.
Right. So I think most condo management will hesitate to make such investment. right? Because I mean, obviously the sinking fund is always limited. It's never enough.
Correct. It's never enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Can. Yeah. So anyway, are there anything that I know you want to share with anyone who's watching this video, like moving forward, like any personal projects or Charge Plus projects? Like, is there anything that you want to share, sum it up, end it up, or get people in? I don't know. What do you have?
Yeah, I mean, my personal dream is this, that my grandkids. I have 2 kids today, right? My grandkids, I'm making a big assumption that my kids will have kids, right? Okay, supposing they have kids.
There's a hint right there, but okay, anyway.
Supposing they have kids, right? They will tell me, when they are young grandkids, granddaddy.
Yeah.
Why would anybody want to drive a car with a tailpipe in your era? Why? It doesn't make sense.
Correct.
Right? I personally think that time will come, right?
Yeah.
That IC cars will be relegated to the museum,
Sure.
etc. And that will be the way of life. EVs will be a way of life.
Yeah.
So that's my personal dream. And really, I'm very passionate about Charge Plus
Sure.
being the driver of the change in Singapore.
Sure.
Right? So look forward to working with many other stakeholders in the ecosystem,
Yeah.
like yourself and
Sure.
and many other like-minded individuals. Right?
Sure,
So
sure.
we will make a change for Singapore.
Yeah, that's nice. That's great. Actually, it's one of the. I'm not sure whether you watched one of the Will Smith. Will Smith, was it? I think it's Will Smith. One of his movies. So I think it was iRobot or I something.
iRobot, yeah.
Was it iRobot?
And there's a show iRobot.
Yeah, where all the robots became got controlled by the
Yes.
And one of the scenes where he hopped onto his motorbike, his female co-actor actually said, "You mean this engine is it's running on petroleum, it's going to explode." Yeah, so that's the very scene that you have for your for your grandkids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So that
Correct.
that scene has been playing out in my mind that the day will come.
Correct.
Right. That the norm is EVs is the way of life.
Yeah.
And you want to see an IC car?
Sure.
Go to the museum.
Correct. Yeah, I'm sure that will happen.
Yeah.
Okay, Ken. Anyway,
Okay.
thank you so much
Thanks, Darcy.
for this episode. Yeah, I'm gonna take a while to. I'll go through the content now, edit the stuff, and then